Brandon had dreamed of this moment since he was a kid. The road stretching endlessly ahead, the open sky above, and his trusty van, a rusty old thing he'd restored over countless nights and weekends, ready to carry him through America's vast wilderness. He called it Voyager, a name that felt as big as the adventure itself. At 27, he was finally living out the dream, a solo road trip across the country, away from everything that felt small and confining. The morning sun poured through his apartment window, the light cutting across the clutter of maps, books, and camping gear scattered on the floor. He zipped his backpack, locked the door behind him, and felt the familiar buzz of freedom in his chest. Today, everything was possible. As he wheeled Voyager out of the parking lot, he noticed her standing by her door across the street, his neighbor, Elise. She was older, maybe in her mid-30s, with a calm kind of beauty and a smile that seemed reserved for moments when she wasn't quite sure if she should laugh or cry. He'd known her for years, exchanged nods and the occasional hello, but never much more. Today, though, something was different. She stepped forward, hesitating like she'd just made up her mind. "Hey, Brandon," she said, her voice catching slightly. "Mind if I come with you? For a bit?" He blinked. The surprise hit him like a wave. "You mean on the trip?" She nodded, eyes hopeful but wary. I need to get away, for a while, and I figured, why not with someone who's already heading out?" He hesitated, heart thrumming in a way that didn't quite fit the moment. They barely knew each other, and yet here she was, asking to step into his carefully planned journey. The risk felt enormous. But the truth was, he wasn't sure he wanted to go alone anymore. "All right," he said finally, voice steady though his mind raced. "Let's do it." The first days on the road were tentative, filled with cautious glances and polite conversation. Elise was quiet in the mornings, sipping coffee as Voyager rolled down empty highways. Brandon watched her out of the corner of his eye, how her hair caught the sunlight, the way she traced the windowsill absent-mindedly, the subtle way her smile softened when she thought no one was watching. They camped near a small lake their second night, setting up a fire under a sky spattered with stars. Brandon showed her how to build a proper campfire, and she laughed when the flames danced too high. They ate sandwiches, the kind that taste better outside than anywhere else, and talked about everything and nothing. "I haven't done something like this since college," Elise said, staring into the flames. "It feels different with you." Brandon smiled, the warmth spreading beyond the firelight. "I was nervous you'd say no." She glanced at him. "I was nervous to ask." In that moment, the distance between them shrank. The walls they'd both built around themselves began to crumble, brick by brick. Days turned into weeks. Voyager became their home, a small bubble of freedom hurtling through the wilderness. They explored national parks where the air smelled like pine and earth. They discovered hidden beaches with water so clear it seemed unreal. At night, they lay on the roof of the van, tracing constellations and sharing stories neither had told anyone else. Elise told Brandon about her past, a failed marriage, the quiet loneliness of a life lived by the rules. Brandon shared his own struggles, the pressure to conform, the fear that this trip might be his only chance to live fully. The moments of silence between them were just as charged as the words. One night, the air was crisp and cold, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. They were parked on the edge of a sleepy town, the neon glow of a diner flickering nearby. Elise shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. Brandon hesitated before pulling off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. "Thanks," she murmured, eyes meeting his in the dim light. The closeness was sudden and electric. Without thinking, she reached out, took his hand in hers. Their fingers intertwined, hesitant at first, then with growing certainty. That night, she asked him to share her bed in the motel room, a gesture that felt like a leap of trust. Wrapped in the quiet darkness, their breathing steady, the line between friendship and something more blurred. The trip wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, silent arguments that neither wanted to name. Times when Brandon questioned what he was getting into. Was this just a passing escape for Elise? Was he chasing something impossible? One afternoon, at a dusty roadside market, a man recognized Elise. The look he gave Brandon was sharp, filled with unspoken warnings. The past was not far behind. Back in the van, Brandon found himself wrestling with jealousy and doubt. Elise saw it too, but neither said a word. The nights grew longer, filled with quiet confessions and the ache of unspoken desires. By the time they reached the mountains, their connection had deepened beyond anything either expected. The cold nights weren't just about keeping warm, they were about holding on. Elise's hand in Brandon was no longer tentative, but a promise. One evening, as snowflakes began to fall, she whispered, "I don't want this to end." He looked at her, the firelight casting shadows on her face, and knew he felt the same. The trip had started as a dream of freedom, but it had become something else entirely, a chance to find something real, even if it was dangerous. They lay together that night, the cold outside forgotten, hearts beating in sync, a fragile, beautiful defiance against the rules and fears that tried to hold them back. This is just the beginning. Trust me, it's only going to get hotter from here. What happens next will make you forget all about peace. The rhythm of their journey had settled into something almost comfortable. Days spent driving through endless forests and golden fields, nights under vast, star-strewn skies. Yet beneath the surface of laughter and shared meals, tension simmered, the kind that came from knowing this fragile bubble could burst at any moment. Brandon had never imagined that a trip meant to heal his soul would become so complicated. Elise, once just a neighbor across the street, was now the center of his world and the source of his inner conflict. One morning, as the sun spilled over the horizon, Brandon woke to find Elise gone. A note lay folded on the dashboard. "Went to the market. Be back soon." His heart fluttered with a mix of relief and anxiety. The silence in the van suddenly felt heavier. When she returned, she carried a basket filled with fresh bread and wild berries, a soft smile playing on her lips. Yet the warmth between them was punctuated by an unspoken question hanging in the air. "Do you think we're crazy?" she asked later that day as they rested by a riverbank, feet dangling in the cool water. "Maybe, but maybe we're exactly what we need to be right now." She looked at him then, really looked, and for a moment the walls came down. As the days turned colder, so did the world outside their van. The reality of what they were doing, defying norms, risking judgment, pressed harder. Brandon's nights were restless, filled with dreams where Elise wasn't there, or where everything fell apart in a rush of accusations and regret. Elise, too, seemed caught between wanting to hold on and the fear of losing herself. One evening, as the wind howled outside their campsite, Brandon found her staring into the fire, eyes distant. "I'm scared," she whispered, "of what this means, of what people will say." He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. "I'm scared too, but I don't want to lose what we have." Her breath hitched and she turned to him, vulnerability bare in her gaze. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted. Neither of them spoke after that, but the silence was laden with everything left unsaid. The tension broke during a visit to a small town fair. Bright lights and laughter surrounded them, but Brandon noticed the way Elisa's eyes darted nervously every time someone familiar passed by. Later, in the quiet of the van, she confessed, "My ex-husband found out about us." The words hit him like a punch. What did he say? She swallowed hard. "He threatened to make this impossible. Said I was risking everything. My family, my job." Brandon's jaw clenched. We can't let him win. But Elise shook her head. "It's not that simple." The following days were a whirlwind of whispered phone calls, hurried meetings, and secretive glances. Brandon felt the walls closing in, the freedom of the road shrinking with every passing hour. Yet amid the chaos, their bond deepened. Each stolen touch, each shared smile was a rebellion against the constraints trying to tear them apart. One night, as snow blanketed their campsite, Elise surprised Brandon by inviting him inside her small cabin in the woods. Inside, warmth and flickering candlelight softened the harsh edges of the world outside. She took his hand, her voice trembling but resolute. "I don't want to hide anymore." Brandon leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both a promise and a plea. But the past wasn't ready to let go. One afternoon, as they hiked through a forest trail, Brandon's phone buzzed with a message from Elise's sister, a warning wrapped in desperation. "You need to be careful. Things are worse than you know." The words sent a chill deeper than the mountain air. That night, sitting by the fire, Brandon faced the reality he'd been avoiding. "We're not just fighting for us," he said quietly. "We're fighting against everything trying to tear us apart." Elise nodded, tears glistening. "I don't know how much longer I can hold on." The tension between hope and despair grew unbearable. Brandon found himself asking questions he never dared before. Were they meant to survive this? Could love be enough to conquer fear, judgment, and betrayal? Every glance they exchanged was charged with unspoken fears and longing. And then, one night, under the cold light of a full moon, everything changed. Elise pulled away, her eyes shining with tears. "I can't do this," she whispered. Brandon's heart shattered. "What do you mean?" She looked away, voice breaking. "I need to figure out who I am without all this." The words felt like a final goodbye, even if she didn't say it. "We're on the edge now. If you think this was intense, just wait until you see what happens next." The silence that followed Elise's words was heavier than any storm they had faced on the road. Brandon sat alone in the dim glow of the cabin's fireplace, the crackling flames mocking the turmoil inside him. Her need to figure out who she was without him felt like a knife twisting deeper into his chest. Days passed without a word. The van sat parked under the heavy branches of towering pines, untouched. Brandon tried to reach her, texts, calls, even a message left with her sister, but all were met with cold silence. The space between them stretched like an unbridgeable canyon. He thought back to their first night together on the road, how tentative her touch had been, how hesitant her smile, how fiercely alive those stolen moments had felt. That fragile spark was now flickering on the verge of extinction. But Brandon wasn't ready to give up. One cold morning, he packed his bag and drove to the last place he knew she'd be, the small women's center where she worked part-time. The receptionist's eyes widened when he asked after Elise, but the answer was the same. She hadn't been there in days. His chest tightened with dread. The days turned into weeks. Brandon's search stretched from town to town. Every door closed in his face, every lead a dead end. His mind spun with worst-case scenarios. Was she safe? Had she disappeared completely? Or worse, was she trying to erase everything they had shared? Late one evening, after a restless day of driving through rain-slicked highways, his phone buzzed. A single message from Elise. "Meet me where it all began." His heart leapt, a flicker of hope amid the darkness. Back at the edge of the lake where their journey had started, Brandon found her standing alone on the shore. The chill in the air made her shiver, but her eyes burned with a fierce light that hadn't dimmed. "Elise," he whispered, stepping closer. She turned, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared," she confessed. "Scared of what this means. Scared of losing myself again." Brandon reached for her hand. You won't lose yourself. We'll figure this out, together. Their fingers intertwined, warmth blooming between them. For the first time in weeks, the future didn't feel quite so terrifying. But their reprieve was fragile. Elise's past followed them like a shadow, threatening to tear apart everything they'd built. Her ex-husband's threats escalated. The social whispers grew louder. Friends and family took sides, making it clear that their love was a scandal, a dangerous secret best buried. Brandon found himself torn between protecting Elise and fighting his own guilt. Every stolen kiss was a rebellion, but also a reminder of the cost they both paid. One night, under the indifferent gaze of a crescent moon, Elise broke down. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she sobbed, "but I can't keep living a lie." Brandon held her tightly, heart aching. "Then let's find a way to be honest, together." Her tears soaked his shirt as they clung to each other, two souls caught between desire and duty. Weeks melted into months. Their love was tested again and again by distance, doubt, and the harsh reality of the world around them. Yet despite the obstacles, they chose each other. One evening, back in their modest apartment, Brandon watched Elise laugh as she cooked dinner. The light in her eyes was different now, stronger, freer. He realized that their journey hadn't just been about escape or rebellion. It had been about discovering who they were, together. As they sat side by side on the worn couch, Brandon took her hand. "I don't know what tomorrow holds," he said softly, "but I know I want to face it with you." Elise smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "No matter what comes next," she whispered, "we have this." And in that moment, the weight of the past lifted, not erased, but made bearable by the promise of love and the courage to keep moving forward.